Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, the 24th of March, and we are here for a very special You Talk episode because this absolute bastard has woken me up to talk about the state election, the one happening tomorrow. Now, voter apathy is at an all-time high, and quite frankly, I can't blame the good voting public of Australia. It seems like all the bastards are as corrupt as each other. So, today, we're going to tackle three simple concepts. Why are we even bothering with this voting malarkey? Who can we trust? And how do we effectively vote for those people? And honestly, after that, I'm going to be tackling a cup of coffee. Kyle, would you care to explain to the good citizens of Australia why the hell we're even voting when the anti-vaxxers are out in force seeking to create a cult following, their own identity, if you will, solely centered around the right to spread polio?
That's a tough question. Unless I remove the anti-vaxxer part. But why should you vote? I mean, there are plenty of reasons to vote. First off, voting is okay. So we've covered more than once in previous videos how essentially how politics is the process by which the distribution of power, wealth, and resources is decided. So voting is the distribution of power. It is your chance to have a say in who has power. It's asking you, well, who do you want to give power to? And that's very important because that'll determine where the resources go, where the wealth goes. And so
where the polio goes.
Well, that too, and whether or not polio exists again. Because polio was wiped out, wasn't it?
Yeah, we wiped it out, and then some absolute fucking twat who didn't get vaccinated caught polio.
Son of a... Wow.
So you have to understand, right? I got one of those flyers in my mailbox very recently, and this is what I'd like to talk about for a moment about cult followings. We have this chap who has, on the face of it, some very sensible policies. He wants to eliminate racism and sexism in Australia. Good. We hate identity-based bullshit, so we're on board with that. He wants to ban midterm and late-term abortions. I have some news. They're already banned in New South Wales, my friend. We don't just randomly yeetus the fetus at 30 weekus. That is not how medicine is practiced anywhere in Australia. He wants to invest in infrastructure. He wants to end toll roads. Cool. Love that for him. He wants to return to the legal 1901 Constitution. Now, speaking of identities, I'd like to remind you that until 1967, Aboriginal Australians were considered native flora and fauna for legislative purposes, and we fixed that by, tweaking the Constitution a little bit and saying, hey, those guys over there, people, actual people, human persons. So I'm not exactly sure what this chap's hoping to achieve, but he is hoping to achieve the end of COVID mandates and violations of the Nuremberg laws by the media.
What now?
Yeah, that's kind of it. There are a lot of people who are promising to fix the country by doing things that don't actually make sense. But yeah, he also wants the freedom to give me a respiratory infection which may kill me. Okay. So you're right. The politics is how we decide who gets the power. And the thing that you said about that being our decision is ultimately what I'm touching on. Australia has a very good electoral system.
Yes.
And anyone who's participated in that electoral system will tell you that it's actually bloody awful. But it is a damn sight better than in other parts of the world.
Well, see, I don't get why anyone would say that it's awful. It's actually, it's probably the best electoral system in the world. Preferential voting, along with secret ballots, so that way you don't have to tell people who you vote for, therefore you can't get persecuted for it. That's really good stuff. like that. Okay, so preferential voting, it allows you. So let's get into how to vote. So preferential
Mm.
voting, you basically you rank the candidates in order of your favorite to least favorite. And so if your first preference doesn't make it, then goes to your second preference. Second preference doesn't make it, third, and then fourth and fifth, until eventually it goes to, well, basically to the end. Now, in New South Wales, unfortunately, we have optional preferential voting, which means that, well, you don't have to do that. You can just mark one, or even like a tick in a box. That's really not what people should do, because if you mark only one and that doesn't get in, you then get no say in who then gets elected. See, the beauty of preferential voting is you can vote for your favorite candidate, but then if they don't get in, you at least get a say in who
You can
else, in who
choose
does get
which of
elected.
the bastards, which of the absolute bloody bastards who you would not trust as far as you could throw. And I'd make a joke about Albo, but honestly, the chap slimmed down a lot. I reckon I could caber toss him a few yards. Let's say you have a candidate who ticks all your boxes. They are strong on the environment. They want to build a nice new manufacturing facility in your area to give you jobs, but not too close to where the kids are playing, so there's no environmental concerns. Let's say they promise you an unlimited supply of free, good quality tea. That's their policy. They are giving you free, high quality tea to help you through the stressful workday. I'd vote for that. But let's be
I think
honest.
a lot of people might vote for that.
Such a person, unlikely to get in. But if they do have a certain number of votes, they become eligible for funding for their next electoral campaign from the
Yes,
AEC.
because
And
we have a partial funding. And
let's say that you vote one for the Tea Party. Oh, that's unfortunate. You vote one for the tea candidate. And let's say your second guess is, you know what? I heard the Greens allegedly don't like it when public parks are paved over to create parking lots. 60s reference, if any of you alive actually remember that damn time. So you go, you know what? I wouldn't mind if they got in. They sort of align with my values a bit better. And so you mark them too. And then let's say you go, good old Labour. Stand for absolutely nothing, but they're unlikely to personally screw me over. We'll mark them 3. This is a simplified example, of course. What happens is that in bigger parties, there are people who specifically analyze preference flows, where their votes have come from. They put a lot of money into this because those bigger parties still want your votes. So they want to figure out how they can present themselves as better representing you. And so they'll go, and you have the Greens going, a lot of these people want a tea. Can we do something about that? Is there anywhere in Australia where we can try and advocate for a tea plantation or something? Regardless of how you vote, regardless of who ends up in power, preferential voting means that your input goes somewhere. It doesn't just go into the bin. Unless you vote Liberal, in which case your input is going into the bin because we've established that the state Liberal government cares about no one and nothing other than itself and its cronies.
yes, we could talk for hours just on that alone.
That's definitionally corruption. Look, all I'm saying is that so much of the Liberal Party has been caught up in corruption. Do you know how the New South Wales ICAC started, Kyle? Do you know what actually happened there?
Yeah, we've talked about this before.
It was Premier Rann. He was so convinced that those dickheads in Labor were corrupt. He was so convinced. He wanted to purge the corruption from the politics. And he thought, you know what? I'm pretty sure those guys over there, dodgy dealings, don't trust them. And then he managed to nuke a third of his own party. Whoops.
Yeah. Yeah, 1 second. Just going to fix up my camera here.
Yeah, a previous state Liberal government gave us ICAC, and it is the gift that keeps on giving, let me tell you.
Yes. Well, except for the fact that it now is too cowardly to release important information before an election that voters need about whether or not a state government is corrupt. That's information that should be released. That is information that should be voted on. But we've covered that.
So I'm just going to point out here.
Episode.
I'm just going to spoiler this. Spoiler alert for any of you who are waiting with bated breath for the ICAC drop. Spoiler alert. Journalists Jordan Shanks, Michael West, among others, have, with a great degree of dedication, alacrity, relevance, and just enough snark to keep us interested, documented that, yes, these people are in fact corrupt. They are taking money. They are using power improperly. Nothing about Dominic Perrottet has come out yet. And look, honestly, Dominic Perrottet seems like a nice guy. He seems like the kind of guy that I can have a few beers with. And I know that that's a curated picture. It has to be. Someone with that many kids, you just know that at some point in his life, he has dropped the F-bomb in frustration in front of a 3-year-old. Any parent will tell you.
I think we're getting a bit esoteric now.
That guy looking sane after having that many kids, something's wrong.
I think we're getting a bit esoteric now.
Okay, but, so how? Yeah, so I've taken Perrottet. You talk about Mins quickly.
Okay, look. Here's the situation with Mins and Labour. Labour. I mean, look, it's been rumored, and I 100% believe the rumors that when Jodi McKay was Labour leader, Chris Minns was undermining her and leaking to the press. Now, it's just a rumor. I don't know that for a fact, but I believe it to be true 100%.
I would believe that to be true in basically any context. It's the nature of politics.
Yes.
It's a dirty business.
Yes. But at the same time, Chris Minns, whenever he speaks, he sounds like a politician from the US, which is understandable as he got his higher education at a US university and he studied public policy in a US university. Now,
that in itself isn't a reason to discredit a candidate. Let's be entirely honest here. A US education, if you work for it, if you go to a reputable institute, is relatively comprehensive and of a comparable quality to an Australian tertiary education.
Yes. However, to look at okay, so an education in a US university in public policy, essentially being taught politics in the US gives you a certain viewpoint of politics that is very identitarian and corporate friendly, to say the least.
Yes, and we have the same problem in Australia because our most successful export is fucking Murdoch.
Yes. However, the point that I'm trying to get at here is that in that way, it's a lot more extreme over there. Now, that being said, even though he basically sounds like a Clintonite Democrat every time he speaks, the Labour Party in New South Wales still did at one point make Jodi McKay their leader. So they wanted to have a good leader, which means they want good policies. I'll give them that much.
Okay, now, so let's ask a separate question here. Let's ask a separate question here, just quickly while we have the time. I think we can make this in less than 40 seconds. Okay. Dom Perrottet leads New South Wales Liberal Party. Chris Minns leads New South Wales Labor. I don't even know who's leading New South Wales Greens at the moment. It's a bit of a nightmare. What does the leader of the party actually have in relation to the party? What you say about good policy, if Chris Minns, as leader of the New South Wales Labor Party, is elected to be the state's premier, how much power does he actually have? Can the body of the Labor Party still push for good policy
To a degree, I think they can. And so, and that's sort of the saving grace is although they effectively have a semi-corporate stooge as their leader, the party itself did want a better leader originally. And
Yes.
they did want, they wanted to implement better policies. So they won't be perfect, but they'll be a damn sight better than the Liberal Party has been. But then again, that's a low bar, as established in I think the last episode. The Liberal Party of New South Wales, I mean, it's more corrupt than Joe Peterson's government was in Queensland.
No. That's an unfair comparison. Joe Bjelke-Peterson had a cult of personality that, quite frankly, none of the Liberal leaders are charismatic enough to pull off.
Yes, but in terms of the sheer levels of corruption,
corruption is awful.
I think that they're worse. Yeah, I
think we've shit on the Libs enough at this point.
Yes.
So,
right, so let's
go through
the
now,
options.
what are the dirty secrets in the other options? We have Labour, where there was politicking, regrettable politicking, but they're probably still an okay choice. What's going on with the Greens?
I mean, look, the Greens in New South Wales are a bit of a mix. They once voted to make it official policy that they don't want to have capitalism itself.
I'm okay with that.
If that was like
capitalism stifles innovation.
I mean, look, yes and no. I mean, look, I don't really even look at things in terms of, capitalism and communism anymore, because while useful as theories, they're not so useful in very practical terms. When I think of things in practical terms, I think about, government expenditure, infrastructure, whether or not you're living in a capitalist or communist society, it's, only going to work if the government is spending decent amounts on infrastructure and maintenance for that infrastructure, healthcare, education. We've seen the US essentially hollow out from the inside because it refuses to spend any real amounts of money on education and also on infrastructure. It's and so it's I'd say it's less to some degree less about the system itself and more about the specifics. Devil's in the detail. But with that being said, let's get into the options. So Liberal, very corrupt, very corporate friendly. They do things pretty much only for themselves and their cronies, and the Nationals are just the Liberals with hats. The Labor Party, fairly humanist in New South Wales, but and they will look out for your interests to a degree. But they're gonna toe the line enough to not get thrown out of government. Chris Minns is what they call a media-friendly candidate. He's like them, and so they see
he is
him
the
as
acceptable face. Yes,
and so then there's the Greens. Voted once to be against capitalism. I've met a few members of New South Wales Greens. I am not particularly impressed.
До свидания, Берлона, как нам трудно пророждать тон.
Yes, it's kind of funny how I'm very serious and you're just cracking jokes right in the middle.
Look, I remember that once upon a time we referred to people as watermelons. Mostly the Greens candidates who'd come over from the Communist Party of New South Wales or the Communist Party of Australia. And the idea being that they're green on the outside, but you get the knife and they're red. Though, in fairness, most humans will be ready if you apply a knife to them.
Yes.
Look, I just stopped paying attention to the Greens after Senator Rhiannon stepped down, because she was damn good at her job. She was she was still a communist in the Greens, but she actually believed in trying to make a fairer world. And I'm willing to vote for someone who still has the courage of their convictions.
And see, that's there's a whole, we'll get into that in another episode. But that's, because I'd like to talk about that and faults of the Labour Party in that regard. But that being said, there's still a ton of other options. Dismissing all of the crazy options, particularly in the upper house, the Legislative Council, sort of the state version of the Senate at the federal level. I'd highly recommend the Legalized Cannabis Party. Now, you might think, wait a minute, not only is that in each party, but they're talking about legalizing a drug. Well, the drug itself has been proven through numerous studies to be pretty harmless.
I've engaged recently with them on Facebook. Like, their policy is actually pretty sound.
Yeah. And also they have Jeremy Buckingham on side. They have him, he joined their party, and he has been trying to look out for the Murray-Darling a lot in the last decade. He's been
Wasn't
there.
Buckingham previously Greens? Yeah,
he was part of the Greens, but then some factional power play bullshit happened, and I think
I vaguely remember him working with David Shoebridge for a while as part of the Sniff Off initiative.
I don't remember that, but I do remember that basically, factional power play bullshit. He was accused of something, no evidence at all for it. And
but it was enough.
It was enough for him to have to either leave the party or, I can't remember whether he left or, was forced out. But either way, he wasn't going to be up for re-election with the Greens. And so he moved on, and then he joined the Legalized Cannabis Party recently. Yep. And, if there's someone who you want to look out for regional Australia, if there's somebody who actually cares about water resources, which is a huge problem in this country, the ENSO event in the Pacific Ocean, I think, is going to a neutral phase this year. And it might be the same with the Indian Ocean Dipole. So we're about to go back into a drought period, because we have a roughly every 3-year wet period and drought period. And so for the next couple of years, we're going to be seeing droughts. And it's going to be pretty bad. So what we need is a member to represent sensibility in water resource management, particularly in the Murray-Darling. And also somebody who's just generally a lot more sensible in all regards. And that is Jeremy Buckingham. And so I'd highly recommend that.
I'm going to make a recommendation here as well in relation, because we haven't covered this yet. I believe Shooters, Fishers and Farmers are running only for Senate.
No, they have members in the House, in the lower house, actual members.
Regardless of what Shooters, Fishers and Farmers, regardless of what they did to Helen Dalton, they did Helen Dalton dirty. Let's make no mistake.
To be honest, my understanding is less that they did something particularly to Helen Dalton, and more they missed some crucial votes in the human interest. And so Helen Dalton decided that, she'd be better off as an independent, and she could do better work as an independent.
In any case, back to the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers. Look, I'm in a suit, right? I'm not really comfortable in a suit. I am more comfortable in a denim jacket. I am more comfortable in no jacket. I am better working with my hands than I am looking presentable. If the Shooters, Fishers and Farmers were running someone in my seat, they would have my first vote. They have a very strong record on conservation, better than the Greens, I would argue. They are very much in favour of appropriate shepherding of resources for rural Australia. And in the city, they definitely have a reputation as, how would you put it, gun nuts. But you have to understand that when you have shooters, fishers, farmers, people who understand that if you destroy nature, you're not going to have anything left to shoot, to fish, or to farm. there is a certain conservational bent that comes with that. Like, Robert Bosak is a character. Helen Dalton is no longer with the party. They're still worth voting for, in my opinion. They have been relatively straightforward the entire way, and they're not corrupt bastards, which is,
Yeah.
I can be serious.
So wonderful. So I'd say they're definitely a valid choice. Wouldn't be my first choice. That goes to Jeremy Buckingham.
You and I have different priorities
and
views, but at the end of the day, we want our politicians honest, and we want people to live in a fair society.
Yes, and those two options, that is very much those two options are very much those things. Very, they're honest and sensible. And there are a couple of other options to consider. One that comes to mind would be the Sustainable Australia Party. I actually once recommended putting them, I think, first on the ballot in the Senate at the last election. I'd say that my opinion of them has dropped a little bit lower
Shifted a
since then.
little.
Yes, they're not terrible, but I'd say they have about a third of what you need to be, a very good party in politics. They have
And would you say that working from the inside, because you worked for them briefly, didn't you?
Yeah, I worked for them briefly.
And would you say from your experience in that time, and I am just going to make this yes, no, so nobody comes after you, but I remember we've spoken about that. I got the impression that maybe they didn't completely understand how they could best use their resources.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'd say, look, this is entirely my opinion.
They still have the principles, they still have the policy, they're still worth something, but maybe this is just a practical way of looking at it in terms of, having that preferential voting happening so that someone sees that you have those values.
Yeah, so I mean, I should be quite careful here because part of my contract was that I wouldn't use things I learned about the party to damage the party. I probably should have.
I don't think we're damaging the party at this point. I think that they have a core group of believers. I think they have a strong policy platform. And I think that they do have the integrity that is sorely needed in politics. But I also think that it's not unreasonable to say that who knows, maybe getting into power will be what they need. If they have the policy, they have the integrity.
Perhaps.
Maybe being able to take advantage of that larger support base would help them.
Yeah, I'll say this. So in terms of, I wouldn't say that they're going to represent country folk and their interests incredibly well. They'd probably be okay with that. If you demonstrated various reasons to do something, for the country, for rural areas, they'd probably get on board.
Well, one of their key things is stopping overdevelopment. So, they're going to be more focusing on the fact that we're trying to turn Parramatta into a second CBD, and the fact that the local environment there is massively suffering due to the huge amounts of construction and development happening. Yes. And I'm okay with having a party that is representing those interests.
Yes. And so with that, that is a decent, they have a decent policy platform. I'd say the way they view politics, is pretty much like everybody else. And the way the way I've seen them present their arguments after I left, hasn't changed. They still view sort of liberal labor as exactly the same when, they're obviously not the same. And they still view politics in terms of, left wing, right wing, even though that dichotomy is complete bullshit. But if you want a decent policy platform and at least the somewhat pragmatic approach to wanting to get it through, then they're a valid option. So let's see, is there anyone else? There's shooters, fishers, and farmers. There's covered the greens. We've covered Sustainable
There's the
Australia,
Informed
legalized
Medical
cannabis.
Options Party.
Oh, jeez.
Let's talk about the Informed Medical Options Party for just a moment.
I can't believe a party got started about that.
The Informed Medical Options Party, not very utilitarian. They want you to believe that your ignorance is as good as New South Wales Health's expertise. They want you to believe that you have the right to send your child to school, sick and sniffling and creating a cluster of infection. They want you to believe that you have the absolute right to refuse to put things into your body without consent. And that's actually pretty sensible.
In principle.
They believe that vaccines are going to give you autism. Like, yeah, I had my COVID booster and my autism hasn't gotten any more pronounced. So like I'm getting shorted here.
Yeah.
I think they're wrong.
Yeah, here's the thing with them that I think is, because okay, technically they have the option to not get vaccinated. They actually already have that option. What they want is the benefits of getting vaccinated with the option to not get vaccinated. That is
what they want is an identity.
Well, yes, but they also, in policy, what they've proposed, if you run it through its natural course, is, they want the right to, be able to get terribly sick and spread that to others in workplaces and in schools, and childcare centers.
Look, here's the deal. If you want to vote for informed medical options as a voter at the ballot box, vote for literally anyone. We have New South Wales Health. New South Wales Health, no matter how much pressure they are placed under, are basically politically agnostic. New South Wales Health will give you informed medical options. If you want to vote for a nutjob who wants you to be able to spread the plague, then the Informed Medical Options Party probably has a candidate for you.
Mm. Yeah, and I guess one last thing on that is that, because what the point that I was trying to get at just before is that you can refuse to get vaccinated. Yep. But then you just can't do certain things. That's the law. The law doesn't state you have to get vaccinated. The law says that you can't do certain things. You can't work certain jobs where you put people at risk, like in aged care. Can't work in aged care unless you're vaccinated because you're putting people at risk.
Yep.
And so what they want is essentially those safety precautions to be eliminated. So they want to make people less safe for their supposed freedom. Which they already have. So yeah, so there's that. So is there anything else to talk about? We've gone over, why you need to vote.
We've gone over how to vote, and we've gone over how to vote. The very broad strokes of who can be trusted. Look, all I'm going to at this point, I'm going to disclose what my voting pattern's going to look like in broad strokes. There is no way to legally verify this, unfortunately. But I haven't made a habit of being a liar in life. And I'd like to think that on this show, we see that the things I say will be truthful representations.
Hey,
I'm voting Labour in my local seat. Our candidate, Trish Doyle, has a track record of doing excellent work with the local community. The fly-in the Greens have put up don't get it. Like, the Greens don't understand this community. They are not a good fit. The Liberals,
lost cause.
They're trying, but they just don't actually understand what needs to be done. And so despite the fact that Labour is not my first choice as a party, in this seat, I'm voting for a person. I'm voting for Trish Doyle because I know she can do the job. And that's important. In the Senate, well,
Legislative Assembly is technically what it's called.
Yeah, I'm going for shooters, fishers, and farmers, among others. That's my pattern. Like, who are you thinking of voting for in your seat, Kyle?
Okay, so in my seat, Funny enough, I just realized I haven't researched all the candidates in my seat. If there's a decent
Well,
independent, I might vote for them. It's all right. I can do all the research after this.
We got less than a
But
minute on Zoom, so
all right. Well, if
tell us about the Senate quickly.
look, it'll be legalized cannabis because Jeremy Buckingham. Then there may be another party there, but it'll probably be Labor, and then maybe Sustainable Australia, Shooters, Fishers, and Farmers, and
then an
anyone
outro
else who looks
probably.
good. Yes. All right. Take care,
Okay,
everyone.
cut to outro. Enjoy the election. Get your democracy sausage. It'd be
All right, take
un-Australian
care.
not to.